Hey Bozo. I have made games for 2 years now, and that's a pretty long time. You know, depending on the context, even 2 minutes can seem pretty long. So, what were my achievements? What programs have I made? And what have I gained throughout this year? Wait. Debt. Crippling addiction to Magic the Gathering. I began my journey by making games that used words and characters to create visuals. Last year, I began to create programs that made actual 2D images, and this year we took in one more D, finally rendering proper 3-dimensional graphics. It's important to note that I already made 3D visuals last year within engines like Unreal, but these programs don't use a pre-made engine, instead leaving memory management to me. It was cool learning about what goes on under the hood, about lighting, optimizations, terrain generation, and GPU usage. As for engines, I learned about post-processing effects and made things like outlines and cross-hatching. I put some wall text and text. I've put some text walls here to explain the topics mentioned and to pad for video time. Honestly, I feel like I can improve at and learn these programs better. By getting better at graphics programming, I can make games that use less computing resources, making my games quicker and more accessible. Artificial intelligence in games doesn't need to be perfect. There are plenty of games that do just fine with simple behaviors. This year, my coping mechanisms included Magic the Gathering, Cookies and Cream, and VTubers. When I first started, that was all I had. Simple behaviors like chase the player, move to a random location, or attack. This year, I improved on this by grouping and controlling behaviors with finite state machines and behavior trees, leading to more convincing AIs. I made a couple of automated games, like a capture the flag simulator and a game about ants. I also learned how to use different types of movement algorithms, from a simple chase, to a smooth wander, to more complex behaviors like flocking. Overall, learning AI programming was probably my favorite part of this year. There were many sleepless hours that I'll never get back, and I'll definitely use what I've learned in future games. Before we move on to proper games, I have a bunch of miscellaneous stuff that I wanted to show off before we moved on to proper games. Please compliment each program to cheer them up after not being able to feature in their own section. First, we have a cloth simulator, which detects collisions, can be grabbed, and tears if stretched too much. This was probably my favorite thing to code this year. It's not perfect, but it is definitely satisfying to watch. Next, we have the twin mobile games, Waterspout Defense and Adblock Testing app. Waterspout Defense is themed after the Itsy Bitsy Spider song, and Adblock Testing app is a clicker game where you dodge ads on screen. They are both fairly simple games, but considering the fact that mobile is the most popular and profitable platform, learning mobile development and ad monetization is pretty important as a game developer. Finally, I learned multi-threading and networking, which can let my programs run faster and communicate between devices. This year I've worked on 3 proper games. Well, actually it was 4, but I didn't do any work on the last one, so I collaborated with other programmers and artists to make these games, and while it was by far the most stressful part of my year, I am pretty happy with how these games turned out. We decided to lower the scope of our first game, reducing the number of features and overall quality to get a feel for the workflow and our team dynamics. We opted for a simple 2D game, which we called Project Hailstone. You play as an astronaut who's stuck in space. Dodge and destroy obstacles, collect materials, and upgrade your ship. Your goal is to get through the atmosphere and return home. I worked on the ship's movement, and I really like how the thrusters tied to the turning and movement of the ship. The second game is called Wipe the Floor. It was much more ambitious, stepping up to 3D and sporting many more features than Project Hailstone. You played as a janitor, clearing each room of corrupted enemies with an assortment of weapons and abilities. My favorite part of the game is the time slow ability, which you'll see in a bit. The final game is called Deep. It's a fish game called The Deep. Do with that what you will. My favorite part of the game is I've learned a lot of things during this year, and I wanted to mention some important lessons, both to reinforce them to myself and for any would-be game programmers looking to learn from my experience. Plan things out thoroughly and maintain consistent communication. You'd be surprised at what sort of things people take for granted, so try to agree on as much as you can in the planning phase, and communicate when you deviate from the plan. Don't get too invested. Never think that your game is the final version or that your game reflects on you as a person. If you do that, then you'll start sacrificing time and effort better spent on other endeavors. And finally, insert third point here. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for helping the channel reach 1K, and let me know what you'd like me to cover next. Later, Bozo.